Welcome to In the News for July 11th, 2025. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Happy birthday, Jeff. Well, happy birthday to your original 3G iPhone that you got. I love the way you started off your blog post today. 17 years ago today, on July 11th, 2008, you woke up very early that day to go to your AT&T store and wait for your phone. Now, this wasn't the original iPhone, right? This was the 3G iPhone. And I just loved how you even had the original tweet from all of those years ago. Hello, world. This is Jeff's new iPhone tweeting. And I think this may be one of the first posts that you had on iPhoneJD.com, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed. And it all came back to that 3G. I still own my original iPhone 3G. I have it. I kept it. And I was going to tell you, I wish I had brought it in today to hold it up to the camera, but I don't need to do that because there's a picture of it at the top of iPhone JD for the last, 17 years or whatever.
Every page.
Because that was what it all started with. When that first iPhone came out in 2007, I was so excited because I was like, because I had been using a Trio for a while. And I was like, I was really excited to have whatever the Apple product would be. And then it comes out and it doesn't support, like, the main thing I want to use it for is email, or at least that's what I thought the main thing I was going to use it for. It turned out to be not necessarily the main thing, but an important factor. And when that original iPhone did not work with Microsoft Exchange, ActiveSync, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to use it for my email. So I didn't get that first iPhone, which is just as well, because that first iPhone, although revolutionary, was just so basic in so many ways and everything else.
Right.
And so when that second generation came out, and Apple said, now we're going to support Exchange, I'm like, yes, this is it. And it was a great time because, as I noted, it added the App Store, which, I mean, it's hard to even imagine an iPhone without an App Store.
Crazy.
I mean, it still didn't have things like copy and paste and stuff like that. But I mean, the App Store and all sorts of other features. And then, of course, the 3G network, which, we sort of laugh at now in terms of speed. But that first iPhone with Edge, I mean, I remember the Edge network because I used Edge on Trio 650. It was nice to have. Edge was nice to have, but it was so slow. But 3G was, about 3 times faster. It was so fast that Apple put it in the name, of the product, the iPhone 3G. And so that was just a revolutionary product. This was the beginning, though. I don't know if they had, I guess they did have lines for the original iPhone too, but like these were back in the days where you couldn't just pre-order an iPhone and have it shipped to you or something like that. And so for many, many years, if you wanted the new iPhone on the day it came out, you would have to wait up early and go in line. And I would say at your local Apple store, but there were far fewer Apple stores back in 2008. We didn't have one here in New Orleans. And so I woke up early to go just to an AT&T store. And, I just expect, I got there at the crack of dawn. It was not even the sun up yet. And I'm like, surely no other idiot. I mean, this is like downtown New Orleans, right? This is a business area. I'm like, no one else is going to be standing in front of this AT&T store. But I wasn't first. I was fifth in line. That store only had 2 of the high-end models. And of course, by definition, anyone in line that early in the morning was a enthusiast who wanted to get the high-end model. So they're like, well, you could get the low-end 8 gig model in white. And I'm like, no, I don't want the white one. I don't want the 8 gig. I want the 16 gig. Nowadays you can do anything with 16 gigs, but I wanted the bigger model and I wanted the black one, and I had to wait. But at least I put my order in, and a few days later I actually got it. And it was, I laugh when I look back at it now because I guess were you involved in Tech Show back in 2008, that long ago?
I was, yeah.
I'm
sorry. It's a couple of years. So I've been going to Tech Show, but I wasn't involved.
You have been going to, yeah. You and I did not know each other at the time, that's for sure. And I barely knew it. Yeah, I sort of knew what Tech Show was. I guess I had spoken there once before, maybe at that point. And so because the first time I went to Tech Show, I actually didn't talk about iPhone things. I talked about preparing for disaster recovery, because as an attorney in New Orleans that had lived through Hurricane Katrina, believe me, we knew about disasters.
Yes, right,
so that's why I submitted that post for the Tech Show blog, which at the time was a good place to submit things about why I thought the iPhone was really useful for lawyers. And then 2 months after that is when I turned that into this first post. So like that 3G just changed everything. And everything has come out there. We know how much the iPhone has changed over the years. But for me personally, and I know for a lot of other people, that 3G and then the next year, the 3GS models, I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the chart of iPhone sales, and I mean, they had a lot of sales in that first year, but it really started, it's one of those charts that goes, whatever you call that type of a chart, that goes steeply up. That's when so
It's
many
the
people
hockey
started to get it.
stick. Yeah.
And then the opposite was
Yeah.
the BlackBerry sales for attorneys, right? Because
Right.
BlackBerry was
Right.
king, and then BlackBerry, as iPhones went up, BlackBerries went down, and then eventually, went away.
I love this post on November 17th, 2008. And you actually say down here, I don't recommend an iPhone to all lawyers.
Hmm.
Many don't even need a smartphone. Just a simple flip phone will do. Others
Those
never
times
use
have
anything but
changed. Yeah.
email and want a physical keyboard. And for them, I say just get a BlackBerry. Wow, how times have changed. It's just great to see that. But it is nice to kind of walk down, memory lane just a little bit and just to think about that. I mean, wow, that's been so long, 17 years ago, and look
Yes,
how far
17
we have
years ago.
come.
So I mean, that's
Just a
that's
little
that's
crazy.
it's amazing. Ugh.
So let's switch gears and talk about the Apple Watch now. I don't know that I
The
got up at the
future as
crack of
opposed to the
dawn to
past.
get
Yeah.
to get into line for the Apple Watch, but you had a couple of interesting stories. You and I obviously are huge fans of the Apple Watch. We have always talked about this idea of the angle coming at it from the health components of what the Apple Watch is doing. Yeah, it'll tell you time, but it does so much more. And it's just been amazing how that has sort of transformed my life, similar to just 17 years ago, how we started using the iPhone. This was an interesting story that now Apple apparently is using an AI model to look at the data from the Apple Watch to make health predictions. Now, I use the Apple Watch every day to be able to kind of see, trends in my health, my sleep, health, how much sleep I have, how many steps we have. But wow, could an AI model look at that and then start predicting health issues maybe down the road? And it sounds like that's at least one of the directions Apple is going to be going here.
Yeah, and in fact, Brett, you're framing this as an Apple Watch story, which is legitimate, but I actually
Yeah.
think that more appropriately, this is sort of an AI story. It's the
Yeah, yeah.
idea that
Okay.
when you have, and again, both of those viewpoints are correct. It's just that when you have a large amount of data, AI is really good at trying to figure out patterns and things from that
Hmm.
data. And we hear about
Yeah.
this every day. We hear about AI, looking at the human genome product and looking at, so many fields, but certainly in medicine, and health, when you look at stuff over time, the AI can start to draw connections. And, many of us know the old phrase that, correlation is not causation. Just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other. And yet, when you
Right.
see a lot of correlation, and AI can see correlation a lot deeper than most of our brains can handle, it can actually spot trends. And so this has been coming in a while. You and I have talked about this in the podcast of the past, but this is like, and now we're actually seeing some studies that's using some AI models. And Apple, I mean, what they really want, I think, is for the Apple Watch, because it's, right there on your wrist. It's just so personal with that data.
Hmm.
But really, they want all the worlds of data. I mean, even information that you might type yourself into the health app that you get from whatever source.
I
Like
see.
how much
Yeah.
you weigh every day, for example, or something like that, or you might have a smart scale that tells it. But
Yep.
Apple wants to
Exactly.
put all that stuff together and say, what can we predict from this? Because I think this is, I mean, not that it's going to take away the job of a doctor, because a doctor has got all the experience and everything else, but but it might see some things that the doctors might miss, which
Hmm.
is just really interesting to me, because this study talks about how, I don't have the numbers in my head, but I'm going to say it was something like, the Apple AI might predict things with 75% accuracy, whereas like a doctor would be like 25%. And I might be off in those numbers, but it's something like that.
Hmm.
It's now, of course, the doctor is going to bring a lot more to the table. And once you have a diagnosis, the doctor can do a lot more with it. But like, these are just all tools that are coming
Yeah.
together, and Apple's going to
Yeah.
be at that forefront with the combination of having the wearables to get a lot of information from your wrist and stuff, and also having the AI models. And the things that's good about Apple, there's this whole discussion about Apple Apple's AI stuff may not be as sophisticated as what
Right.
ChatGPT and
Right.
Anthropic and all these other ones out there. But what they are doing is they're coming up with these small AI models that are more limited, but that they just run on your device, which means you've got perfect privacy, which is what you want for something like your health. I mean, people don't necessarily want the world knowing about that. And and, these models will get better over time. I mean, I think Apple is on an interesting track here, something that they can bring to the AI table and do useful stuff on. I'll mention one more thing, Brett, which is as a lawyer, AI, it was just a few years ago that we all heard about ChatGPT. And now, not only is it becoming a big deal in medicine, I know my brother's a doctor and I'm sure he's looking at this stuff, but for us lawyers, it is it's becoming really huge. I mean, we've been doing some of this stuff at my law firm where you can just throw a whole bunch of information, a bunch of documents, whether it's a whole bunch of transcripts
Right.
or a bunch of contracts or a bunch of, documents of any kind of documents, and you can ask the AI question, and within seconds, the AI is like this expert. I mean, imagine if you hired somebody to read every document and know every footnote, every nook and cranny, just know it all.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, you need to do that in 30 seconds. I mean, and then once that expert exists, you can ask them anything and it can pull out all of this information. And I find it incredibly useful as a lawyer because I'm constantly working with exhibits and documents. Or heck, even if I just, throw a draft of a brief that I'm working on and say, hey, Mr. AI, what do you think about
Right.
this? And it'll give you suggestions. And of course, you need to use tools as a lawyer, and I'm sure doctors are concerned about this too. You need to be private and secure. I would not use ChatGPT. I would use one of these services that's specifically designed for lawyers so that it's got
Right.
privacy and security and stuff. But I mean, this is the future. This really is. I mean, and so if you're interested in the future of technology, you cannot ignore how quickly AI is getting so much better with what it can do. So that's why, to go back to the story, this story has a fascinating story with the Apple Watch, but that's why I say I see this as more of an AI
More of
story.
an AI, right? Well, it's definitely a very scientific paper here. I mean, already my mind just goes blank here looking at all of this on there. But I'm glad that there are some stories like this coming out with AI and how they are applying some of this technology to the tools that they already have. Of course, a lot of people are complaining they're not doing it fast enough, but this is good to see. I'm glad you linked to the story. And sort of on a little bit of a related note,
Yeah,
speaking of
yeah.
legal battles, I thought we could throw this in as well because we've talked about this several times. This is the lawsuit going on from a company called Masimo, Masimo, against Apple that has prohibited basically Apple from putting in. I always forget exactly what this is. Blood oxygen reading technology, right, in the Apple Watches.
Hmm.
They were there before, and I know there are some models. I believe my wife still has maybe an Apple Watch. I want to say maybe a 5 or something that still has this technology built in. But every model since then, while it could have this technology, it's been prohibited by this by the court ruling here. And you reported on a story from Reuters here where it's at an appeals court. It may still take some time for us to get some kind of a resolution here.
When the original ban came in place, and I want to say it was right around the holiday buying season. Like I think it actually started on Christmas Day of 2023, if I remember, and then it went into an
23.
effect,
Wow.
and then it finished, and then it went back into effect in January 2024. I mean, we're talking a year and a half ago. When this happened a year and a half ago, I thought, well, surely, I mean, I know that Apple's going to try to win it in court, but like if they can't get it reversed in court, I mean, it's all about money, right? It's just a patent issue. Apple
That's
has
right.
so much money. They want to have this feature. They do have the feature outside the United States. They're going to want to have it in the United States. I'm sure they're just going to pay. Someone's going to get together in a room, maybe
It
with a
should have been
mediator,
resolved.
and they're going to
Right.
resolve it. And yet, maybe Apple must really think that it's right because I'm sure this has an impact on sales because a lot of people like having this blood oxygen sensor in the watch. And it's
Right.
bizarre that like I have something, it's right here, it's in my watch, and I can't use it
It could
because of
work
this
right
court
now.
ruling.
Right.
It could work
Right.
if Apple would just get this resolved. And yet, but no, so Apple has appealed it, and it's now at the federal. This is not a court I
U.S.
practice in. This is U.S. Court of
Yeah. U.S.
Appeals
Court,
for federal
the
circuit,
federal circuit. Right.
which I know
Right.
has a lot of patent appeals and is the appeals from this court. And so they filed their appeal in spring of this year. I don't remember the specific date. The oral argument was, I think, this past Monday. And so
Okay.
that
Okay.
means that there's, for non-lawyers, that means there was a three-judge panel that heard their appellate argument. And how long will it take the appellate court to rule? I mean, who knows? I've seen appellate courts rule in as quickly as 30 days. But, typically, there was some statistics I saw on the internet that said that this particular court's typically around 6 months I know some federal appellate courts are closer to 3 months, but then even once it rules, that's often not the end because you've got post-appeal
Right.
rulings. And so suffice it to say that if Apple is going to litigate this to the end, which it appears to be what they want to do, I don't see this resolving this calendar year. And
Just
then whenever it
unfortunate.
resolves, either Apple will win and then we have the feature again, or Apple will lose, and then you have to just assume that they're just going to have to pay a lot more money than they want to pay to get the feature. So
And is it true? I mean, could they be using this technology that's built into watches now that we have? Could they just be capturing information or data from this, you think, Jeff,
hmm,
or they just can't turn it on at all? They probably can't turn it on at all. Because I'm
they
just
probably
thinking
can't turn it
back to
on at
that
all.
story we were just talking about, like this to me would be another critical, health tracking that they
Absolutely.
could be doing right now that they're not able to, and that could be adding to some of this, with the AI components and data points and stuff. But
Yeah.
okay, we'll continue to
No, I
watch
mean,
this and just see. It's just unfortunate, I think.
if you are a person who has respiratory problems, like if you have COPD or
Yeah,
something like that, blood oxygen is absolutely something that you might want to monitor. I mean,
right.
I remember a lot of us learned about blood oxygen levels during COVID because that was one of the things that
Of
if your levels
course.
got too low. And so, and of course you could buy these cheap little things that you put on, I say cheap, I don't know how much they are. I'm sure they're less than $100, but you just put them in your finger and it checks it. But that's an extra thing to worry about. If you've already got the watch there on your wrist, it's just so convenient. Plus, the nice thing about the watch on your wrist is that it can monitor it over time because, obviously just one data point means one thing, but looking at
Exactly.
trends, that's what can actually be interesting.
Let's move on to talk about a couple of interesting tidbits coming out again with iOS 26,
Oh,
iPad
yeah.
OS 26. We'll start there because I love this little interim time here. That it was announced, of course, at WWDC, and then we're waiting, of course, until probably September when it comes out. But so many people have been getting their hands on the developer betas and playing with it, and we're seeing some changes. I love this. Is Chris Lawley, who's always done some great stuff on the iPad and has been using it for a long time. And I love this when you pointed to it today because this is a nice little trick that I have been using on my Mac for so long, Jeff. I love this. I usually have my cursor kind of tiny, right? Just a tiny, like I don't even think I've made a change to it. It's just a tiny little arrow. And I don't know if you can even kind of see it that I've got it there on the screen there. I could probably do this because I'm on my Mac right now.
Right.
But if you are moving your mouse here, I'll put it over here on the left. You can see it. And it's like I can't see it, or typically when I have multiple monitors, I don't know which monitor that the cursor is on. But on the Mac, you have been able to do this for a long time. If I just shake my mouse quickly back and forth, you'll see the cursor will get very large and show me exactly where it is. Now, I've had that on the Mac for a while. And I like now that Chris Lawley has reported that he can check off another one of his wish list features. You can now shake the cursor in iPad OS 26 to actually see where the cursor is. Now, I don't know how big of a deal this is on an iPad screen, but now that you can put multiple monitors with an iPad, I feel like this could be a very useful little tiny trick. I love this.
Yeah. I know that you just did it live for folks watching the video, but I'm actually not seeing it on my end. I take it you
Oh,
are
you
on
can.
yours. So
Okay. Okay. I
it
am.
happens so
Yes.
quickly that it's not showing it over the Zoom recording, but
Okay.
at least I don't think it is. Maybe it'll show up in the final version of this video. But regardless, it's a feature that people that use a Mac probably know about. Since I use a
Love it.
PC at work, I wish I could do it because I've got two monitors here in my office, and sometimes like, where is I don't know where and you
Yeah.
find yourself
Yeah.
moving around. It's a very cool feature. And so now that the iPad is becoming even more of a device that you can use very well. You don't have to use it, but you can use it very well with an external keyboard and an external pointing device, whether it be a trackpad or a mouse. I think this is a great idea. It's just one of those great Apple-y features that is going to be so nice to bring to a new platform.
I think there is a way. I'll just try to be fair. In Windows, I'm not exactly sure because I don't use Windows every day, but it's like a buried setting, I think, that you can hit like a
I'll have to
hotkey or
search for
something
that.
like that to go in and see it. But I just like it, especially on a MacBook Pro. And if you're using a trackpad, you could try this when you go home on your Mac at home, Jeff. You just take your finger, you just like go back and forth like
Oh yeah,
really quickly, and you can see it and it pops up. And I'm just
I
glad.
love it.
I mean, again, it just to me, this is what's going to be so interesting for the iPad to be me. We talked about this already at length, but it's just the continual blurring of the line between an iPad and a MacBook, or at least a MacBook laptop. And I'm just like, okay, well, you're just running Mac OS on an iPad at this point, I feel like, or you're getting much closer to that. And that could be interesting.
Yeah, and what's particularly interesting is that we're in this period of time. We had the new OSs announced in June. They're going to come out in presumably September. And so during this beta period, if history serves as a guide, and I think it does, during these first couple of months, we start to see some interesting new things added to the betas. And then as we get closer to September, Apple's not adding as many new features. It's more of just making sure that there's no bugs and you can ship it. So like right now, early July, we are in this time period. They haven't even released the public betas yet for the iPhone and the iPad. We are in that time period where Apple is starting to continue to add like some pretty cool features that people are going to really like. And so this is just one example of it. I'm sure there's others that I haven't even heard about yet. And where it comes from, and this is what you were referring to, is for so long, I just have a sense that Apple saw these clear dividing lines between the Mac and the iPad, and the big change of iOS 26 and iPad OS 26, especially iPad OS 26, is Apple seems to be saying, you know what, it's okay for those lines to blur between the two, and if there's a really good feature on the Mac, why not bring it to the iPad? And so the cursor is an example of it. The windowing is an example of it. There's tons of examples of it. And this philosophy change of don't worry, it's okay. People still love the Mac. It's got its own world, but you can let the iPhone borrow some things that work really well on the Mac. And the opposite's true too. If the iPad's got something that's pretty cool, hey, you can bring that to the Mac. That philosophy change, I think, just makes everybody happier with their products. So it's really exciting to me.
Our friend David Sparks has also been reporting. He's been running apparently the iOS 26 developer beta on his iPhone. And he has reported, and I love this little image that he put here on his website, that maybe response to some complaints that the liquid glass interface coming out in iOS 26 is a little too much see-through. David reports that they've kind of made it a little tiny bit less see-through on this. He goes, this comes as a surprise to nobody that pays attention to Apple beta cycles. They always start at an extreme with beta 1, and then they kind of slowly dial it back. I think you said the same thing when we first started talking about this, Jeff, but I'm glad to see that Apple is continuing to respond to some of the comments here.
Yeah, like you say, Apple's done this in the past. In fact, it was when you were in New Orleans a few weeks ago when we recorded the podcast, we were in the same room. That was when the new betas were out. And I remember thinking, liquid glass looks really cool. But my guess is that they're starting way up here just because it's really cool. And let's just push it to the end. And then as people start to use it, then we're going to dial it down. And so, I think it's going to go the other way too. It's going to be like a sine wave. Like, now they've pulled back on it because they realize that although it looks really fun, and believe me, that's the main reason for the liquid glass, because it looks fun. It's going to make all of our iPhones look sort of fun and cool. But you also don't want that funness, is that a word, to get in the way of usability. And so now they're dialing it back.
Exactly.
So it doesn't have quite as much of that cool effect. But it's easier to read. It's more legible. And if you look at these two pictures that Zac Hall posted on 95 Mac and David Sparks is reposting here, it's just a static image, but just looking at the static image, I actually wonder if Apple may have pulled back too much, and like maybe they actually want to loosen it up a little bit. I don't know. And this leads into the next story that we had here. I don't know if you can pull it up because Threads sometimes doesn't show up on a computer screen. Good, you do have it here.
Here you go.
This is on the Apple Watch. So the Apple Watch has liquid glass too, and there's two pictures here. This is the control panel. So like if I tap the button that's on the side of my Apple Watch, it brings up all the little, control panel things. And in the original version of the beta, Apple thought it would be really cool for every one of the buttons, when you have them selected, to glow such that the buttons next to it that are not selected, they would sort of have the effect of the light shining off of it, which Benjamin Mayo in this post on Threads said he's like, it's like a disco ball, it sort of shines everything over. I have to admit, I actually think it looks sort of cool, but in the current version of the beta, again, just like we talked about in the iPhone, Apple has dialed it down. And so now there's a slight glow on the buttons around it, but it's not nearly there. And I actually sort of, I mean, again, just from the static image, I haven't actually tried it because I don't have the beta installed on my Apple Watch.
Right,
I
right.
think I prefer the way they had it before because it seems more fun, but who knows? I trust them. They're trying to find that happy medium throughout the interface. And so this is what they're going to do in the beta period. And because it's a beta period that we can all watch, it's just sort of fun to sort of see how Apple is tweaking it, and we'll see where they end up in September, October.
You're saying you prefer the disco ball, Jeff.
I
You
think I do prefer the disco ball.
you call it fun. David says whimsy. It's
There you go. I
whimsy. He
like that's a
loves the
better
liquid
word.
glass.
Whimsy.
We are now going. They should have just called it liquid whimsy, and I think that would have been a much better on that. Well, thank goodness for this story today. If you have been missing your favorite football team in CarPlay, now you can get an NFL app right on CarPlay. Oh my goodness. I almost want to file this in things that I did not know that I needed, and I still don't need them. But if you want an NFL app to show on your CarPlay screen, you got it now.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly what the app does, but there's this one
Right.
company that that works with a bunch of the NFL teams, and the first three to have them are my own New Orleans Saints. Woohoo, which is
Who
gonna have a
dat?
horrible season this year, I think. You know,
Yeah.
we long for the days when Drew Brees was our quarterback.
Right.
But the Saints, the
Drew.
Buffalo Bills, the Chicago Bears, what I would want for this app to do, I don't know if it actually will do it, is in many local cities, and New Orleans is one of them, you know, we have our local radio broadcasters here in New Orleans. It's on WWL that cover the game and have for a long time. And these are the people that really know the players because they're local broadcasters. And I typically prefer to listen to their play-by-play. And so sometimes what I'll do when
Okay.
I'm watching a
Yeah.
Saints
Right.
game,
Right.
I'm sure people do this in other cities too. I'll watch the
Right.
game on my TV, but I actually use my amplifier to switch the audio to my FM radio so that I can listen to
Nice.
the local guys talking about it because
Right.
they really know
Right.
the players and I know their voices versus the national people that, you know, change from week to week and stuff. So I sort of do that. But if I'm driving around in my car, you know, sometimes I might just want to listen to the Saints game. And right now, what I have to do is I need to switch from CarPlay. I got to find the button because I use it so infrequently in my car to switch over to
Gotta go to
FM radio.
FM. You
I
gotta go to
know it's
actual
like
radio.
the old days. And there have been times actually where I've been like traveling and I wanted to listen to a Saints game and I'm outside of the local market and I'm like, well, because you know, I'm doing a road trip or something like, well, how do I do this? And you got to
Right.
find an app and pay money. So I don't know if that's, you know, it would be, I would love it if the Saints app or the Buffalo Bills app or the Chicago Bears app would actually, you know, purchase the rights to play the local sports announcements. So that would be a definite thing. And
That
then
would
I
be
could just do
cool.
it with
Yes.
I could do it with all within CarPlay and I wouldn't have to figure out how to switch to my FM and how to switch back to CarPlay because I do that so infrequently. But again, that's just but whatever. Who knows what they're going to do with the app, but it's nice to see anything coming to CarPlay.
I
Why not the
guess.
NFL?
Why not? I put this under the heading of like I remember when Dunkin' Donuts came with an app. Although I got to tell you, every once in a while I'll pull that one up on CarPlay, but I don't know why I need an NFL app. But hey, you know, for some of you guys out there, some of you folks that are really interested in your team, you can now follow them while you're driving around. Well, it sounds like you unfortunately dropped your iPhone not too long ago in the airport. And I know that feeling of you drop it, you look down at it, and then there's that moment as you're bending down to like, please, 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 please do not crack. Please, please. Fortunately for you, Apple continues to do some amazing durability testing. And you linked to a story today, Jeff, that I just thought was cool. We've seen some of these over the years when Apple, you know, dares to let somebody in to just give a few images and take some pictures around on some of this. But I thought these were cool. I don't know that I've ever seen this picture here
Yeah,
where
that's
an
interesting.
iPhone, it's almost like lasers, but this is like water lasers, you know, being shot at an iPhone. But hey, you know what? I'm glad that Apple has spent the money to do all the durability testing so that you and I can relax once we know that it dropped and we pick it up and we see that there's no crack.
I
And
don't
may we
have
continue to have that.
I don't have a case on my iPhone, and a lot
I
of
know
people
you
look at
don't.
me like I'm crazy, and I think you're one of them.
Right.
But I just I don't want to add to the bulk. I want to be able to easily slip it into my pocket, and most of the time it's fine. But For last year's model, and I think a couple years before that, I would often buy a case that I would only use really in one time, which is traveling. Because
Right,
sometimes when
right.
you're in the airport, you're fumbling with your phone, you're using it as an ID, and I've got bags in my hands and stuff like that. And so I just found historically that that was one of the few times I would actually put a case in my iPhone. But when I got my current iPhone 16 Pro Max last fall, I'm like, you know what? I use it so infrequently, and I don't even know that I need it for travel. I'm not going to get a case right away. Let me see. And then here we are so many months later, and I just haven't bought one at all. So when I was traveling recently, I didn't have a case. And again, it was typical. I have an iPhone I was using for something. I went to go put it in my pocket. It slipped out of my hands. And like you say, Brett, we all know that feeling. You're like, oh no, oh
You skip a
no.
breath.
But then when it was fine, I was like, oh, isn't this
Really?
nice? I mean, bravo, Apple. So all of these pictures you're showing of these, pretty funny, robots and stuff that are doing all this stress test. I say robots, whatever,
Right.
these machines that are doing stress testing. Thank goodness Apple does this because goodness knows that today's iPhone is a heck of a lot more durable than that 3G that I had 17 years ago. And I'm glad because I know that people like me, Lord goodness knows my kids. I mean, I love my teenagers, but they're dropping iPhones all. I mean, it's almost become a joke. My son will typically get like one of my hand-me-down iPhones, and so even though
Okay.
it's no longer my iPhone, it's his now. Still sort of feel an
You
affinity
still
to it. I know I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm anthropomorphizing my things, and so he drops it all the time, Brett. And when it does it, it's becoming a joke in my family. He just gives me that smile, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? So
What
anyway,
are you
thank
doing?
goodness Apple makes these things durable.
I could get liquid water testing and I just imagine there's like buckets of water that
Sure.
people are just dropping them in. I get drop testing, but I like this story. Apparently, they also do vibration testing. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that they needed, but it looks like they've got about 6 MacBook Pros strapped to this table, and they have it different frequencies that are simulated through a vibration table to create different shaking environments. I did not know. I
That's
don't really
interesting.
really go into it. I mean, I guess maybe a plane or a car, maybe. I guess I don't
Yeah.
know if you
See, the
have
thing,
different
and
things,
I
but
see it
never thought about
for
that.
an iPhone because, like, I talk about CarPlay. I mean, my iPhone just sort of sits on my cup holder, and I guess it shakes around. But like your laptop computer, does a
Yeah,
laptop computer shake that much? I guess it's
I
good to know.
I wouldn't think so.
Um, but I guess
I have
having
to
said
tell you,
that, it wouldn't take much to cause some damage to those delicate insides. So
I was just looking at my iPhone, which I do have the Apple cover on it, and I am seeing 3 corners out of 4, Jeff. I can see a little tiny crack on each of these corners because I have dropped the phone,
so there you
of
go. So
course,
it's doing its job. Yeah.
inadvertently. And the fact that I see these little cracks, I'm like, that probably makes me keep some kind of a case on. Every once in a while, I will take it off because I do like the thinness of it. And this does add bulk. It's not like it's a bulk as a sense of weight so much. It's just when I take off the case, I'm like, wow, this is really thin and much better streamlined. But, I see these like there's little tiny cracks and everything holds together still, but just makes me so nervous.
Can I
And
ask you,
just when
Brett,
yeah, go ahead.
do you like that case? Because I have to admit, if I was going to
Eh,
get one, I mean, it doesn't add a ton of bulk and it's see-through.
right.
I presume that it makes your iPhone not quite as slippery. It gives you a little bit more friction on it to hold it in your hands. Is
That's
that right?
right, a little bit. I mean, and as we know, there's so many hundreds of dozens of thousands of cases that you can get. This is not one of the thinner ones. I think there are some thinner ones that they do bulk up just a little bit more on the corners because typically when you drop it, that's where you're going to be dropping on there. I think I do like it simply because it is from Apple, so I knew and I had a lot of confidence, that all the buttons and everything were going to be fine. I also actually do like the fact that it has a big cutout on the very bottom there. Some cases just have a little tiny hole where
I
you can
agree.
plug that in. So I do like that. And just overall, I mean, I knew that the camera bump was going to be protected there, and I like that. Now again, there's dozens and dozens of cases, and of course it's MagSafe, and that was also pretty helpful because I
Yeah,
take
yeah.
advantage of that all the time on there. But yeah, it just interesting. Just when I read
Thank
that, it's like every time I read a story like that, I cringe, whether it's from you or anybody. Just
Yeah. Thank
dropping
you
the
for that
phone.
mini review. I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Of course, of course. In the Vision, let's talk about just the Vision Pro real quick. I thought this was funny. We don't have too much to report on it, but I was listening to a podcast from Jason Snell, who is, of course, at Six Colors, and one of his co-owners, co-writers is Dan Moren, who apparently, I know Jason has had a Vision Pro for a long time. I've seen pictures of him playing games and stuff, but apparently Dan Moren has not had a Vision Pro, and Dan Moren apparently just got one, if I wasn't mistaken, just this past week, and he's been going through and he's starting to write his little visionOS diary. I'm here for the woe. The Woe Pro is coming on strong, and I like this because it's just great to know somebody like Dan that's been writing about Apple products for so long to get his perspective on the Vision Pro.
Dan is one of the most people that are in the majority that do not own a Vision Pro because it's so expensive, even though I do love it and I think it's worth it for me. But Apple loaned him one for a couple of months specifically so that he could do some writing on it, which is great. And I love the idea of somebody who hasn't been using it for so long, who's coming to it fresh. I mean, he had tried it out before, much like you've tried out mine before, but he had just tried it out, but he hadn't lived with it, which is such a big difference. And so this is his first article, but I'm looking forward to reading it. And even if you don't currently own a Vision Pro, if you're interested in the future of Apple, I love getting the perspective of a smart, Dan's a great writer. He literally is a great writer. He writes novels and stuff, but he's a great tech journalist. And so I'm very excited to have his perspective on this. But that word "whoa," it just made me laugh. I mean, he put it in the title of the article because I mean, because when you've tried it before, there are times when you're using the Vision Pro and you find yourself saying, whoa, like, oh my goodness, whether it's one of these spatial things or like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. This is so much the future.
He's very serious in his persona here. I think he says
I see that, yeah.
And what this is, I saw this very interesting on this Mac virtual display. He's like, is it almost too much space? We've talked about this, and I know if I were to get a Vision Pro, I would just want to wear it all the time because I'm constantly trying to use more monitors and stuff, and just having that expanse of being able to, I call it the desk real estate, but it's my desktop real estate, just having that expanse. And he's like, is it almost too much? But he says he's impressed with the quality. And again, it's just great. Like everything you just said, it's great to see somebody like Dan Moren, who we've respected for so long, writing about Mac products and Apple products, and that he's now just starting to use a Vision Pro. It's going to be great. It'll be fun to watch. In the show, you got to go and see the new F1 movie, which my daughter actually went and saw as well, and she loved it. She's like, it was fantastic. And I don't even think she went to an IMAX. I think you went to an IMAX viewing, and you said you liked it as well.
This is what you want to see for a summer blockbuster movie. You want a big screen, fun, action. I mean, this movie is incredibly, incredibly well done. And I mean, again, and I know nothing about racing. If you are a fan of F1, you're going to love this movie even more because you're going to recognize the real F1 drivers and the announcers and stuff like that. I mean, there's going to all be these Easter eggs for you. I didn't get any of those Easter eggs. Yeah. I just went in just to watch a movie, and it is filmed so incredibly well. And you and I have talked in the past how at least some of the films was actually done with a special camera that Apple made from iPhone parts. But the things that they do, I mean, it is just your heart is pumping. It is an exciting movie. It is, I mean, the plot, it's a typical sports movie. So you can probably, the good guys win in the end. I mean, whatever, big surprise. But the way that they get there is incredibly fun. And it had some twists and turns that I did not see coming. I'm not saying it was like the most incredible movie, but it was totally, I didn't even do that naturally, but it was totally fun to watch. And it's going to be great to watch. I mean, if you don't watch it in the theater, nowadays, post-COVID, most of us watch movies just on our television at home, and that's fine. If you have a big TV, I'm sure you'll still enjoy it. But if you're trying to find like, what is a movie that justifies going to a theater, especially an IMAX screen, which it's even bigger and the sound's even better, this is one. And so I would encourage you to go see it. And I'm not alone because, I mean, as it's been reported, Apple is making a ton of money from this movie. And the thing is, Apple traditionally has not done great in movies. I mean, they had that initial hit with Coda, the sign language movie, but Coda was not a movie that they made. Coda was a movie that they saw in the early days of Apple TV Plus. They saw it at a film festival and they bought the rights to it. So it became their movie, give them some credit. They found a diamond in the rough and they publicized it. And that's, good for you, Apple. But this is a movie that Apple has been involved in since day one. And Apple's come out with a lot of movies, and some of them have been, Killers of the Flower Moon got some awards, and that was good. It was a little long, but it was a good movie. And they They've had a couple more that were good, maybe not the best movies ever. They were certainly enjoyable, but like nothing I would probably justify going to the theater or spending big money on to see it at the big screen. But this is that good of a movie. And so as I've said before,
That's
I hope
great.
that Apple just learns from this experience and whatever special sauce that they added to this. Of course, it also involves working with great directors, great producers, stars like Brad Pitt, although Apple knows how to work with stars. They do that on Apple TV Plus all
Right.
the time. So, I was just it was a fun, this is just a pure fun movie. If this had nothing to do with Apple, we wouldn't be talking about it on this podcast.
Right,
But the fact that
probably.
it
Right.
does makes me excited for the future of Apple movies. And again, let's just talk about the present. If you're out there and it's a hot summer day, you want to go sit in a cool theater and watch a good movie,
That's a
I
good
would
way.
recommend this to anybody. It was a
Is there
fun,
a
fun movie.
is there a scene where they're racing around the Apple spaceship loop with Craig Federighi? No, that's
That
not
would
in
be
there. That
funny.
didn't make
No,
it.
that's not
Okay.
in there. Yeah.
And last thing quickly is more seriously. I'm glad you went and saw this on an IMAX theater because I'm so interested to hear when this comes out to your Vision Pro and you're going to watch it on the Vision Pro again. And I want to hear your comparison on that because I feel like there's still some differences in how you would record for an IMAX versus the Vision Pro, the spatial video. I could be wrong, but I'm just thinking like that's the next thing that I want to hear about this. Obviously, I'm going to watch the 2D version of this probably because I don't have a Vision Pro. I might try to go see an IMAX now that I hear you talking about this, but I'm
Yeah.
just interested to see that comparison because I feel like, that to me will be sort of that next level of what we're looking for in the entertainment side.
Yeah, to be clear, when this comes to the Vision Pro, this is just a 2D movie. It's not going to be spatial. It's not going to be 3D on the Vision
Oh,
Pro.
okay. Okay. Okay.
But watching 2D movies or TV shows on the Vision Pro is still incredible because you can make the screen as big as you want. I have a big
Okay.
screen in my
Okay.
house, but even a big screen is only so big. You know how some people have like a home theater room in their house if you have like lots of money and you actually have a big
Right.
projection screen, like it's
Right.
your own private movie theater. A Vision Pro is the same thing. It's like a private movie theater. And even if I'm just watching a regular show, I love to just if I'm watching with my wife or my kids, well, of course, then you watch it on the TV. But if I'm just watching it by myself, I virtually never turn on my TV anymore. I always turn on my Vision Pro because then I can make the screen as big as I want. So to get to your point,
Sure.
what's going to
Sure.
be
Okay.
interesting to me about the Vision Pro is, there's going to be a version that runs on a regular television, which is just like the regular movie version with like a
Right.
widescreen. But the IMAX screens are very tall, and that actually will work really well in a Vision Pro. I hope, and frankly,
Okay.
I
Okay.
expect, I hope that Apple will eventually release on the Apple TV Plus. We know they will, but I hope that they release a version for the Vision Pro that's in that original aspect ratio format. There is an IMAX app for the Vision Pro, and you can watch
Oh,
IMAX movies. Like for example,
interesting.
sometimes you might go to like a science museum and they have an IMAX theater and they may have something that's filmed on IMAX. And you can currently watch some of the I think you pay a few bucks for it in the IMAX app, and you can watch them in the Vision Pro. And the advantage is that instead of just being a long banner, which is fine, but it actually fills more of your field of view because it goes up and down just like an IMAX screen would.
Oh,
So I'm
interesting.
I'm really
Okay.
hoping, and I'm very curious what Apple's going to do because this is such a big deal for them. I suspect they're going to want to present the movie in the best way possible when it does come to PV Plus. And so my hope is that they will show an IMAX formatted version of it for the TV Plus, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, tonight you won't be watching the F1 movie on your Vision Pro, but maybe you'll be watching the new season of Foundation.
Yeah.
Um, I'm very excited about this. I got to tell you, I love the first season. I feel like I got completely lost in the second season. I couldn't keep track of who was flying around where and what time situation that they were in. Anyway, I still like the overall story. I've never read the books. I know David Sparks, we just talked about. He's a big fan. He read the books. Anyway, this will be good. This was the other piece of news I wanted to talk about and in the show, just the Foundation series coming. Because again, something original from Apple. They took it from, is it Isaac Asimov, right?
Hmm.
And it just brilliantly, I feel like, recorded, and I just like the whole idea, the environment, even if I don't fully understand who is who all the time.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because at the end of my post, I linked to this video on YouTube that Apple dropped this week that has like the top five movies
Yeah.
from the first two seasons, and it was fun to watch that video for me. But when I watched that video, it reminded me that this is a very complicated show. It's a fun show, and believe me,
Complicated. Thank you.
beautifully shot.
Yes.
It's beautifully shot. But as excited as I am to watch season three, part of me wonders if I need to like go back and rewatch
I
seasons one
think
and
the
two,
same
or
thing.
you know what I
Right.
might need to do. Sometimes there are smart people on YouTube that put together like these sort of
Oh,
compilation videos. I
yeah.
don't know if they have the rights to do that, how that works, but like I might need to, or just read something. I need to remind myself of the story because it is a complicated story. Um, and I want to make sure that I understand it because it's not fun when you watch something and you're like, wait, who's this person? Where does this come from? So I need
Right.
to come up with a
Right.
viewing strategy for when I watch it. But I will tell you, aside from that, it's a wonderful show. And the preview, the critics that were given early versions of season three have said that
Mm-hmm.
this is a great season, and many
Oh,
people have
good.
compared
Okay.
it to
Good.
Game of Thrones. And of course, Game of Thrones is such a groundbreaking show that it's getting to be that big. It's that good. It's epic.
Wow.
It's got incredible characters, and and this is epic because it actually goes across decades of time as well.
It's
It
truly
is
epic.
a so it's gonna be fun to start the ride. I mean, it's always sad when a show that I like Severance or something like that ends. But the nice thing about Apple TV Plus is they always have the next one. I mean, today Murderbot
Something
ends, which
else.
is a good show. But when the season finale comes today for Murderbot, that'll be fun. And then I put that one away. But now we're as one goes away, as one door closes, another door opens, and here we are starting with Foundation.
Good. Good stuff. In the know.
In the know.
I had somebody ask me this past week, Jeff, can the Apple Watch take my temperature? And I had to think about that for a little bit because the technical answer is yes, it can take your temperature, but it's not, that's not what this person was asking. They wanted to be able to like go into their watch and say, take my temperature and tell me what it is right now. Similar to like we could do a heartbeat or even an EKG or ECG or something like that, right? We can say, hey, tell me what the current weather is, or tell me what the current time is. Tell me what, but we can't say what is the current temperature. However, this is similar along the lines of we were just talking about this earlier
Yeah.
about the Apple Watch, which is why I wanted to bring this up. The Apple Watch can take your wrist temperature. Now, there's an Apple support article about that explains this. I thought this one from iDownload blog was very good. That it measures a baseline wrist temperature, but it doesn't do it when you go in. There's no temperature app that you can, there's no complication, there's no button to say. But what it does is it will track your wrist temperature in conjunction with tracking your sleep every night. So if that makes sense, you and I have talked about this, right? You can go into this sleep mode. The sleep feature on your Apple Watch and your phone actually kind of work together, right? At least that's how I do it. So I've been doing this for a very long time. And I know you've started doing this now because with
Yeah.
your Apple Watch 10, you can keep it on overnight. You have to keep your watch on overnight. You have to turn on track sleep with the Apple Watch. And then typically you have to go into a sleep focus for at least 4 hours per night. So you can set this up and customize it however you want it. Like I think mine is from 9 p.m. at night until like 4 a.m. in the morning or something like that. You can set whatever time that you want it to be up. And at that time, I'm sorry, I think it's at 10 o'clock. It's at 10 p.m. at night. My watch will go into a sleep mode. It turns it on automatically. And my phone does the same thing. And so then at that point, it thinks that I'm in bed and it can track, of course, my activity and it tracks sleep tracking. So that's one thing from the sleep tracking. But in conjunction with tracking my sleep, how many times I get up, how many times I wake or deep sleep, REM sleep, etc., it's also tracking my wrist temperature. Now, it's really interesting how it does this. There's like two sensors in the Apple Watch that Apple figured out how to do this because it takes like an ambient temperature as well as your actual wrist temperature on your skin. But it saves this. Now, it can't tell you immediately, like the first night that you're doing this. It has to sort of aggregate this over several days. I forget how long they say to take. It's maybe a week or so, 5 days. And so once it kind of gets sort of this baseline, that's what it shows you in the Apple Health app. It shows you your baseline temperature. And then by default, as you go through each night, the Health app will show you how much higher or lower than your baseline temperature you were overnight. I know this is going to sound a little complicated on this, but this is how the Apple Watch will track your body temperature. Now, that in itself is a pretty good tip. I like that, and I like having people understand that the Apple Watch can track your temperature. It can't, I wouldn't say it takes your temperature, it tracks your temperature, and it tracks it over a period of time. However, here's really what I wanted to show for my tip today. Because if you have been tracking it for a while, typically you have to do it with that sleep focus on, and you have to wait several days. But you can go into your health app, either on your phone or you can go into your Apple Watch, and you can see what your temperature was each night. So you go into I do this on my iPhone. I go into my health app, you go to body measurements, and you'll see wrist temperature. Now, by default, at the top, you can see it tells you plus or minus from your baseline. But if you scroll down on that page, you'll see there's a couple of things. First, you can change it from Celsius to Fahrenheit if you want to do that. But there's also a little button down there that says show more data or show additional data. And if you go into that, you can see this screenshot here from Macworld. It will literally give you each night, and it will show you exactly what your wrist temperature was of that night, and it gives you the start time and the end time, and the stores. There's a lot more information that goes into that. So if you are interested in knowing what your temperature was overnight, because typically we're a little bit lower temperature overnight, right, than we are during the day, kind of a thing. But at least there's one way that you can track that if you wanted to get a little bit more information about your wrist temperature. My hope is, similar to exactly what we were just talking about a little bit earlier, Jeff, with the Apple Watches, is that there will be a time where I can just go in, tap a button on my Apple Watch and say, how hot or cold am I right now? What is my bodily temperature? Similar to if I put like a thermometer in my ear or something like that, right? Can't quite do that right now, but I feel like that maybe in the future, this seems to be more of a hardware thing because you got to have the right sensors and everything on there. But if you want to see what your overnight temperature was, you can do that. So that's my tip for the day. That was long and winded, but I just wanted people to know on that. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, I learned so much from what you said because first of all, I did not know that you could actually get a specific temperature, like, 90, 96 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever it is.
Right. Right.
And so you're right. This is the way to do it. And it's obviously taking your temperature throughout the night, but what it's showing is just one number for each night. So I guess it's like the average,
right?
Because
yes.
I know that Apple
right.
knows that it's not 100% accurate, but what they're trying to do is, so that's why they just want to bury the number, because I don't think they have a lot of confidence in that particular number. But what they do have more confidence in is how does that number change from night to night. And so that's why they're showing you a baseline without like an actual number on it. And then is it more or less? I have not, I'm now curious. I'm trying to think of the last time that I had a cold or something like that. It's been a while, but I would be curious. I wish I could do that and go back and see like what was my temperature higher or for that matter, was it lower for some reason? And this is, like you say, this goes back to the story that we had at the top of the show.
Yeah.
Apple is going to see that data. I mean, maybe I don't need to look at it, but I would love to have my iPhone automatically look at it and tell me something that is interesting and actionable based upon what it's seeing. So that's really interesting. Another thing that you said is, and you mentioned this as an aside, but I didn't know this. So as you said, I started using sleep tracking when I got my current Apple Watch last year, because it's now got enough battery power that's okay for me to do that. And I can just charge it in the morning and be fine. I don't currently do, like, at first I thought I was going to use these sleep tracking apps, or they're built into the iPhone too, to sort of like analyze. And, I really don't look at it that much because how many hours did I sleep? Whatever, how much did I get up? But what I do look at is Apple takes that data and it puts it into the vitals setting in health. And again, it's just sort of a general sense of how it thinks you're doing, which is an early version of what we talked about. The way that I currently do it is like literally when I go to bed, I go to my control panel and I kept the button on my watch first.
You manually turn it on.
And I manually turn it on, because only by manually turning it on and off will it understand exactly when I went to bed. Now, of course, just because I go to bed, I might lie in bed and not fall asleep for a little bit. Although, sometimes I fall asleep pretty quickly. Whereas the way that you're doing it, Brett, but again, for me to take the trouble of doing that every night and every morning, it does have the advantage of being like, did I have just a few hours of sleep or did I have more sleep tonight? The way that you're doing it, Brett, of having it automatically come on at like 10 and go off at 4, it means that it's not capturing the number of hours that you slept. But considering that I don't really use that data anyway, what it is doing is it's
Yeah.
on what it needs to be on. It's looking at your body temperature. It's looking how restless you are, those sorts of things. So you're getting all of that information, and you're not
Yeah.
having to manually turning on and off.
I
So I
will
might
tell
do
you,
that.
even though when my sleep focus turns on, let's say it turns on at 10, but I don't go to bed until 11:30, it still knows that I'm up and active. Like it
Oh,
somehow understands, like, because when I get up in the morning, if I only have 4 hours of sleep instead of 6 or 8, it will tell me. And it seems to be
huh.
pretty precise on that. So I would just say for you. So for me, it's almost
Oh,
like a reminder, as in, it's almost going to like the wellness side, right? It's like,
yeah.
hey, but you do need to be thinking about going to bed now. Like, don't be staying up too late. So even though
Huh.
it turns on sleep mode, which is sometimes annoying because if I am up and doing something, I have to like wake up the phone or my Apple Watch.
Hmm.
But at least when it's in sleep mode, like overnight, it knows that that's when I'm supposed to be in bed, but it knows that I'm not actually sleeping. So, and I think again, that goes to some of those sensors as well. It can tell, of course, when you go into sleep, there is a certain, your temperature drops a little bit. And I'm sure there's some other sensors that they have on there that they can tell that, well, you're motionless, right? You're not walking around, because, the gyroscope isn't working the same way. So I don't know all the science behind that, obviously, as you can hear me talking about it. But I do know that if the sleep focus turns on and I'm not in bed, it doesn't say automatically or just by default that I'm asleep. It'll still wait until I'm actually in bed.
Well, that's cool. Well, thank you. I learned a lot from this. So this is
Oh,
very
good.
cool. And hopefully other folks do too. Um, my tip, it actually ironically does have something to do with going to bed in a way, but here's my
Oh,
tip.
good.
So if you have the
Okay.
any of the current iPhone models, the ones that went on sale last September, which is
Okay.
the iPhone 16, 16 Plus, 16 Pro,
Oh, you gotta
16
have the
Pro Max.
16.
So
Okay.
those went on sale September 16 of last year. Or if you have the prior year iPhone, but the Pro models. So the iPhone
Oh,
15 Pro or the iPhone 15 Pro
check.
Max,
Okay.
if you've got one of those, then you have the action button at the top of your phone, just above
Correct.
the volume buttons, and you can control that action button and have it do whatever you want. So you can just set it up in settings. When I press that action button, I want it to do blank. I want it to open this type of mode or open this app or whatever. Something that I found very useful, and I've had it for a long time, is instead of having that button just do one thing, I have that button do two different things depending upon the time of day. And the way that I'm doing this, the
Oh,
reason I'm doing this is because what I find really useful is when I go to bed at night, I'm more of a night owl, so I stay up later than you. And more importantly, I stay up later than my wife. My wife usually goes to bed first and she keeps like a small little lamp on in the bedroom, which is fine that she can go to sleep to that. I have trouble going to sleep with lights on. But anyway, it's nice that she leaves it on for me. But I want to turn it off. And this lamp is hooked up to HomeKit, but I don't want to say, "Hey, you know who, turn off the light," because that's me talking out loud and that's being rude and
right.
waking people up.
Right.
So,
Of course.
what I love having is my action button, and so I can just press my action button and it turns the light off, and that makes perfect sense to me
Oh,
because I usually have my iPhone
yeah.
there. But that function is really only something that I want to do at night. It's not something I want to do during the day. I mean, I don't want to be sitting here in my
Right.
office and making my lamp in my bedroom go on and off. And so, there's another thing that I'd like to do. And so other than nighttime, what I actually prefer doing is Apple has the magnifier mode that you can get to from the control panel and stuff. But like lots of times, I'll be looking at something and I'm like, I can't, I just want to look at that, use the magnifier feature. And I love having easy access to it. And so
Yeah.
what I wanted to do is I
It's
wanted to
handy.
have magnifier mode during the day, but I want to have this mode during the night. And so what I've done is, first of all, I have created a shortcut, and then I've told the action button in settings that I want you to use this particular shortcut whenever I press the button. So that's what's one thing. But then the
Okay.
shortcut itself, how does the shortcut do two different things depending upon what time of day it is? And the way it does that
Do
is
tell.
you have to understand that the shortcuts app knows what time it is, and you can use that information, but you just have to understand how it uses it. And Apple has a page on its website that we'll have a link in the show notes, and you're showing it right now, but it basically just shows that if you want the shortcuts app to know what the year what is the current year in 4 digits,
Right.
the sort of the nomenclature for that is the letter Y for year, like four Ys,
Oh,
Y.
here it is.
That
Yeah.
that is a wild card replacement for the year. What I want is if I want to know what time of day it is, because the way I have it is like after 10 o'clock at night, but before like 3 o'clock in the morning. So if I'm going to go to sleep, it's going to usually be after 10 or before 3, for goodness sakes. And so during that time period, that's when I want to trigger the turn off the lamp shortcut. But how does my shortcut know what that is? And for hours of day, it's the letter H. If you use two uppercase H's, that is the hour of the day, and it's a 24-hour military
Okay.
time. So 10 p.m. at night would be what, 20, right? And so if I want to say if the hour of the day is basically 20 or higher, or if the hour is 3 o'clock in the morning would be 03. So 03 or lower. So that's just what you have to have in your brain. So then it goes into creating the
Yeah.
shortcut. And so I've shown an example of this, and I didn't write the shortcut originally, but I've tweaked it over time. But and we'll put a link to it in the show notes so that you can take a look at it. What I did is I took a
Yes.
couple screenshots and I used one of these apps to sort of string them all together. But what I did is
Yeah.
the shortcut basically says, okay, Mr. iPhone, I want you to figure out the current date. And then I want you to, from that date, I just want you to pull out the HH, which is, in other words,
Okay.
the military time,
That's this box
19,
here.
20,
Yeah.
24. Right. And then from that, if it is greater than 20, so I guess if it's past, I guess it maybe only works for
Yes.
11 o'clock at night, whatever. If it's
Yeah.
greater than 20, then I want you to change the bedroom light to off.
Okay.
Otherwise, if it's not greater than 20, then if it's less than 3, then I also want you to do the same thing, because it would be less than 3 a.m. in the morning. So
3
let's just
a.m.
say I'm
Right.
I'm going to bed at like 12:30 or something like that. I also want this thing to do the same thing. So if it's more than 20 or if it's less than 3, um, but then otherwise, if it's not either one of those things, then instead what I want you to
Otherwise.
do is open up the magnifier app. And
Oh,
so every
okay.
time I trigger this shortcut, I press the action button. It starts the shortcut in the background. It doesn't show anything on the screen or anything like that. And it basically says, okay, what am I going to do now
Oh,
that you press the button? If I'm between these hours, I'm going to turn off that lamp. Otherwise, I'm going to open up the magnifier app. And that does exactly what I want. And so now that I have this shortcut, I can change it over time. Like maybe in a couple of months,
beautiful.
I will decide that during the day, I don't want the magnifier app during the day. I want, who's something else, like my Maps app or who knows what. I can just go into the shortcut and just change that one part at the end that says
Yeah.
otherwise, just open up this app. But it's a nice template. So
Wow.
this is the format for it. Once you set it up once, you really don't have to worry about it again unless you want to change something, and then just call it something. I called it my action button : lamp shortcut. And so then I just go into the settings and I say, whenever I press the action button, trigger the shortcut. So anyway, it's a way to get two for the price of one, and I like it.
It was so helpful for you to walk through this. Like I'm showing this picture, and if you're watching the video, you can kind of see the what it's built out in the shortcuts app, which constantly I just feel like I am certainly not taking full advantage of the shortcuts app. And I just love it when somebody like this, you walk through on here and do this. So okay, when you hit the action button though, Jeff, this is a lot. You basically have programmed the action button.
hmm
Um,
hmm
does it go quick? I mean, I feel like that it's going to have to think through this, but maybe not. Like, does it happen quick on this? Like, you don't see anything happening, right? Does it take a few seconds for this to happen, or does it just open up the magnifying glass if it's in the right time frame here?
Yeah, so to use the action button, you don't just press it quickly. You hold it down for about a half a second,
Right,
okay?
right,
So
right,
I'm going to
right.
tell you right now, I'm going to say start, which is when I'm holding down the button, and then I'm going to
Okay.
say stop when I actually see the magnifier. So let's see how long it takes. Start, stop. There it is. So it's that quick.
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
bingo. Okay.
it's a fraction of a
It,
second.
right. And I know what you're talking about because typically that button has been, or at least for me, I think I still leave it on for silencing, right? Or muting the phone. I mean, I feel like that's just terrible. It's like I'm not
Yeah,
taking full
that's the
advantage of
traditional use
that.
case, is to mute the phone, because
Right.
that's what we
Or
used to
some
always
people
have,
will
that switch on the
do,
side. Yeah.
or you can go in like now in the settings, right? This happened a couple of years ago where you can go to the settings, or I guess with the 15, right? That you can change it. Like you can be a camera, it can be the flashlight if you want it to be on. So that's sort of
Flashlight's a
like the
good one too. Yeah.
built-in. That's
hmm
the built-in options that Apple gives you within the settings app, and it's like a really nice little kind of a visual interface there to change that. But what you've done is taken it to that next level, my friend. I mean, you are like creating a shortcut, and then I assume somehow, okay, so here at the very top, you've assigned this entire shortcut programming stage here to your action button. So
Well,
the
actually,
iPhone knows. Yeah, go ahead.
what I've actually at the very top there, that's just the name of the shortcut. Actually, that's
Oh,
the name.
okay.
I mean, I could call it Fred if I wanted to. I can call it whatever I want.
Okay,
But
okay.
once you give a name to the shortcut, then in the settings app, that same one with all
That's
the
where you,
pictures.
okay,
So
okay. Yeah.
you have a picture of a flashlight. If you want the flashlight app, one of the pictures you can choose is run a shortcut, and then you just tell it what
That's
the name of your
right.
shortcut is. And so
Yeah.
that's what it
Yeah.
does.
So this is what we're
That's
talking
it. You
about. So
just showed it. Right, right, right.
if you go into settings here, and then you can just flip back and forth, and what you're doing is you just gone to the shortcut button, wherever that is
Mm-hmm.
on there
Mm-hmm.
now, and then you just say, it says choose a shortcut, right? And that's what you chose in there. Okay.
Yeah, and that's mine
Brilliant.
right
Yeah,
there.
there you
Exactly.
go. You
That's
got
exactly
it.
it. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I love this. Okay, well, thank you for providing this. And like we said, you were nice to upload a picture of this to your website. So we'll make sure we include the URL there that people can click on if they want to copy this amazing little shortcut in there. That's great. I feel like we've mentioned David Sparks a few times. He has, I think, what he calls a field guide, right, on doing shortcuts. That would be probably a great place to start for me to go through and learn a little bit more about using the shortcuts on there. I'd like to learn a little bit more because that's a good thing. That's a good thing on that. All right, Jeff. Well, thank you. Enjoy Foundation tonight, season 3. I might do the same. I got to tell you, I might that, but like you, I'm thinking, do I need to go back and watch? I feel like I got season 1, but man, season 2, there was just so many things happening in different planets and worlds and everything, and it's like people coming back from the dead. And okay, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But good stuff as always. Thanks, Jeff, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye bye, everybody.